Hello, this is Stephanie Pepper with eManage One. Today I want to show you a video on how to customize grid layouts. And you can customize grid layouts for just yourself, make default layouts for just yourself, or you can, if you have the ability, if you have the right to do so, you can save grid layouts for your entire organization. So this is a great tool to really customize some different grids, different reports inside of eManage to better fit and better customize for your company, what makes sense to your business. So what I mean by customizing grids, right now I'm in your current opportunities. So today, current opportunities, all of these reports here, they're all grids. So anywhere you see something like what kind of looks like Excel format where you have columns and rows, those are grids. You can customize any of those. So, your current opportunities is the one I'm going to work with today, but know that you can do it, in your actions to perform. You can do it in your BOM on the top and bottom, anywhere in the program where you see a format kind of like this. Okay, so I'm going to get started with some simple formatting. Anywhere that you see these column headers, you can sort them. Okay, so you can just click right on top of decision date, and it's going to sort it from smallest to largest. So you see this triangle right here to the right of decision date. That's going from the smallest to the largest. If I click it again, it's just going to sort it backwards. So largest to smallest. Okay, and so I can click on any of these column headers, and you can sort them. So on top of project name, I can just click right on top of project name, and it's going to sort it by project name. Okay, so a lot of times, you're using project number or any date, things like that, and even salesperson. Okay, you can sort by salesperson. You could add to sort, so I can sort by project number, and then right-click on primary salesperson and say add to sort. Okay, so it's going to have both of these in the sort. Okay, to remove something from sort, you can just right-click, remove from sort. Okay, so that comes in really helpful with numbers and salespeople. Okay, also inside these column headers, you also have filters. So anywhere you see this little filter icon here, that means I can click, and it just looks like a little funnel. I can click right on top of this filter and say, you know what, I just want to see all of April's projects. So I can uncheck all and just check April and hit OK. And it's going to show me just those salesperson's projects in the current opportunities. Okay, that's a great little tool, especially for the salesperson column if you're not a salesperson. Okay, obviously, if you're a salesperson, you should only be seeing your data here in these reports. Okay, so those are some simple functions. You can also move columns around just by grabbing them and just dragging and dropping. So you see those arrows there. I'm just holding down my mouse and saying, you know what, I want to put this one over here. Okay, so you can drag them, move them around. You could also grab them and drag and drop. So I'm just highlighting them and removing them and dropping it. Okay, that's not removing them completely from this report forever. It's just removing it from this layout for now. You could save this layout. You could get back in, and your default has that one in it. It's still going to be there. Okay. Speaking of these headers here, you can also always go to this field chooser over here in the top left corner of your report. So this guy right here, these little icons, it looks like two different little grids. Okay. This is what we call field chooser. And your field chooser is going to be different for every single grid report. Okay, so you're going to have different options to choose from it and every single different report. Okay, so I'm going to expand it out to make it a little bit larger. So I'm just you see that little, those little arrows there? That means I can drag it, make it a little bit bigger. So as you can see, there's a lot of data in here that I can make available on this report. So what I can do with this is I can either just check these off and it puts it back on here, or in order. Put them back on here, whatever order they were in. Okay, but I can easily just grab them and drag and drop, just like I was moving and grabbing them and dragging and dropping like this. It's the same concept. So I can grab decision date and move it here. Okay. I can grab, estimated profit, estimated margin, move it closer to the front. Okay. So you can also, like I said, uncheck and it'll just remove it completely. So if I just uncheck estimated profit, you'll see it just removed it there. But it's always available to grab back on. Okay. So I talked briefly about right-clicking, but I want to show you in a little bit more detail what you can see from your right-click menu. Okay. So if I just right-click on top of decision date, I have a couple different options here at the top. So, and if you just scroll over these options, it'll tell you what they are. So here, toggle summary. What that means is you can click on top of this and it's going to let you choose to make a sum. And any data that's actual numbers. So if you notice this approximate value right here, there's no sum symbol. So watch what happens when I click on top of sum. You see how now there's a sum symbol? So if I did not want the sum at the bottom or I did want it, now I have the ability to click on top of this sum symbol and say, you know what, I don't want the sum, and okay. Okay, removes it from the bottom. If I do want it back, click sum and okay. So if you're not seeing that symbol next to that column header, okay, you just need to right click anywhere on top of any of these columns. Okay. So even if I do it over here on top of decision date and I uncheck it and recheck it, you can see that sum is going away and coming back. Okay. The next, the first one over was filtering on and off. It was already on, but if you don't see that filter, I talked about the filter a little bit at the beginning of this video. If you don't see that filter icon, again, just right click and you're just going to choose filtering to be on or off. Okay. The third one is grouping. So grouping on or off. This one's a really great tool, and I'm going to go into more detail about this in just a few minutes. But if you don't see where, so watch what happens when I click on top of grouping. Now you see drag a column header here to group by that column. If you don't see that, just like in the sum or the filtering, you just need to right click on top and say, hey, turn this grouping on. And I'll go into detail about grouping in just a moment. The next one is expand collapse rows. So if you had some data, if you're looking at your invoice report and you want to see all the data that is below, so anywhere that you see a little plus sign next to a row, if you want to expand it out, that becomes really helpful, like in the BOM, the bottom, if you want to expand everything and see all of your options and not have to expand each one individually, I can just right click on this and say expand or collapse rows if you want to make it all back into just one line. That becomes really handy in the BOM. Column freezing and toggle row freezing. So I really like the the column freezing. So if you don't see the little pin icons, okay, so column freezing is up here. Okay, these are your columns. And so if you don't see that little pin icon, again, you just need to turn it off or turn it back on. Okay, so here, if I just click this little pin right here, it's going to pin my primary salesperson to the left and freeze it so that when I scroll, I'm still seeing that information. So again, if you're not seeing that little pin on top of your columns or your rows, okay, you just need to right click and turn it on or off. Select all rows, will obviously select all. Configure editable fields. I'm not going to get into too much on this video, but if you are interested in configuring editable fields, please call into support. It's pretty simple, but basically what that means is I can make some of this data editable. So if I wanted to make decision date an editable field, I could right click configure editable fields. You have to go through some configuring of that row. But again, call into support. They should be able to help you a little bit more with that. But that comes in really handy when you're wanting to edit things at a very global level or just quickly edit things right here within this report. So decision date is one of those, project status, project manager, if you want to easily just flip that in the screen, approximate value. All of these can be editable fields. If you're not sure what fields can be editable or not editable, again, just call in the support. Reload data, that's a great one. If you've been adding some opportunities into the system, you can reload straight from here. Okay. And you have a print and an export. So you can export this straight to Excel from your right-click menu. Okay. What I'd like to show you now is kind of how this right-click on top is related to this grid functions in the bottom right corner. This is just a really quick, easy way to get to some of these that you might use on a pretty on a pretty regular level. Okay, so right click, but also you can go to grid functions and you're going to see a lot of the same data. If you do not see grid functions, you might have to hit this little green button in the bottom right corner to get this whole toolbar to show up down here. And you will need this toolbar on a pretty regular basis if you are going to be editing your grid layout. So get familiar with that little green button. It pulls up your grid functions, but it's also going to pull up in the bottom left corner how you can save. And we're going to talk about saving in just a moment. Okay. So grid functions, like I said, it's a lot like that right click menu. You have that refresh, your refresh here. You do have to expand out to some of these to get to some other options. So, column functions, you might have allow grouping of rows by column, allow column freezing. So you have a lot of the same options here, but you're going to have a little bit more options as well. So there's a lot that you can do in the grid layout. Get comfortable with it, get in there, feel it out. You're not going to break anything. So get in there and just click around and see what all these different options do. Okay. But grid functions, you can also save grid layouts to a file and load grid layouts. So if you're taking it from one computer to another and you forgot to make them public, these are a great option here. You do have them from grid level options, those that configure editable fields. Okay. Print, export, copy, there's that export to Excel. Okay. If you do not see export to Excel here, more than likely your administrator needs to go into set export right and check your name off here. Okay. And only your admin can do that. So if you cannot export a grid layout and you really want to be able to export it to Excel, you need to see your admin. Okay. All right, so let's make some changes and save them, and so that you can see what some of these different functions do and how to save grid layouts. Okay, so I'm going to move some of these columns around. So let's just say I want to put I'm actually going to unpin this. So that pin is down, that little needle. I'm going to unpin that, and I'm going to move project number to the front. Maybe I'm going to leave salesperson there. Maybe I put expected decision date, the front. Again, any of these that I don't see right here at the front, I can grab my field chooser. I moved it and made it a lot larger so it stays that way while you're in this report. Maybe I put approximate value at the front, and let's say estimated sell. Let's put those in order there. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin all of these. Okay. So I'm going to pin my project number to the right. I'm also going to pin my salesperson, my decision date. So I'm just freezing these columns. So as you can see, now when I scroll over to the right, everything on the left is staying. So that data sticks there, freezes there. So all this other data becomes really easy to read, and you're staying on that row so I can see exactly what I'm working with. Okay. So I'm going to remove a few columns as well. So I'm just going to take off registered, and I'm just grabbing and dragging and dropping it and removing it. Okay. I'm going to say status change day. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to remove days and status. I'm going to keep some of this other stuff right up front. So I'm just removing a few. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this one. I'm going to save it as a public, but I'm not going to save it as my default. Okay. So to save, now let's say I'm happy with this grid layout. I've moved a few things around. This is how I want it to be. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, down here in the bottom left, again, if you don't see it, you need to hit this green dot in the bottom right corner, where you see this toolbar here to where I can save it. So I'm just going to click in here. If you do not see this save button, more than likely you just need to backspace all the way. So I'm just clicking backspace on my keyboard several times. After you click it several times, all the way back, you should see this save button brighten up. So if it's grayed out, just backspace whatever is in here and then rename it. So I'm going to rename this one, sorted by project number. Okay. And I do not want it to be my default, but I do want it to be public. So I don't want it to pull this way every single time, but I want other people to have access to this from their computers. So that's what public means. Okay. The first icon here is delete. Okay. You have to have the ability, the right to delete on your user rights profile. The second one with the hand underneath, that's saving it for my entire company to be a default for the entire company. So whether or not I selected default off, okay, if I click this one, that's going to be my default and default for the entire company. You do have to have the rights to do this. So a lot of you may not have those rights. If you do, awesome. Maybe you get together with your entire team and decide what is going to be a great layout and save it for the entire company for that default. But then you can also have these other layouts as, backup layouts of what you want to take a peek at every now and then. So that's what I'm going to kind of do now. So I'm going to hit the save button, okay? And that's going to save it as a public grid. But as you can see, it just defaulted back to my original layout, okay? So now to get back in it, okay, I want to open it back up and select it and then hit open. Okay, so now it's opening back up my layout that I just saved. So all those items that I pinned, I removed a few columns. So now let's make a couple of other changes. Let's turn on grouping and talk about grouping. We're going to group it by salesperson. Okay, so what I'm going to do is hit the field chooser, and I'm going to say, group it by primary salesperson. Okay, so all I did was drag and drop it right into that top portion. Okay, again, if your grouping is not on, if you don't see at the top where it says drag and drop here to group, you just need to right click and say turn grouping on. Okay, then you can group it by anything. Group it by project number, group it by project type. That's a great grouping that people group by company type. But for this example, I grouped by salesperson. And I am going to go to the grid functions and show you a couple of other different little options here. Okay, I'm going to expand out so you can see what I do here. Okay, so I turned on grouping, I grouped it by salesperson. Now I'm going to go down here to grid functions, and I want to go to column functions, summary values, and I want to show summary at the top of my grid. I need to move I need to move my meeting thing away. You can't see those options. Give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. Okay, grid functions, column functions, summary values. I want to show summary at top of grid. So those summaries that I have at the bottom, so down over here, you see these summaries right here? Now I want to show them at the top of the grid. So see how it puts them at the top there? So if I want to move them to the top where I can see those summaries in a very quick glance, okay? Now I want to show the text summary in group by row. This is a really neat little option. You do sometimes have to click it twice. So show summary values, and I want to text summary in group by rows. This one here, great little tool. So watch what happens here. Oh, it did it for me. So, you know what? Let me do that one more time. Column functions. So see how the data is all kind of put into one row? It's not a great little view. I'm going to go back and click it again. Summary values, text summary and group by rows. And look what it does there. Such a neat little formats it really nicely. So these are my approximate values, and my estimated sale by salesperson. So again, you'll have to play with it. It's a great tool to use to get data looking the way that you want it to. I'm going to resave this one now. Actually, I'm going to change a couple of other things. So what I want to do now actually is I'm going to change a couple of the names on the headers. You may not know about this, but all of these texts in a grid layout, you can customize them to what makes sense to you. So you know what? I'm going to change this and shorten the way that this is worded so it's viewed a little bit better. You know, you can drag these and make them bigger. Okay, I can make the size of these columns bigger, but I don't necessarily want to. I just want to shorten the word in the column. So I'm going to right click on top of estimated sale, and then up here on the current caption, this is always going to stay the same. Okay, it's built into the system. It's coded in there to read estimated sale, but maybe I want it to say EST sale, a little shorted. Okay, so you can change these column captions, and make them say what you want them to say. So, you know, I'm going to drag this out a little bit bigger so you can see all of the quote date wording. But yeah, I can say, you know what, I want this to read just sales rep. Okay. And you can do this in the, like I said, in the quote screen, in the BOM, in your actions to perform, anywhere you have a grid layout, I can customize it to make exactly the way that I want it to be. Okay, so I'm going to save this. Again, I want to back all of this out all the way, and now I'm going to call it grouped by sales rep. Okay, I'm not going to make it my default, but I do want it to be public, and I'm going to just hit save. So now you can see I have some different options here. I can save as many layouts as I want. Okay, so I'm going to open this one back up, grouped by sales rep, open it up, and now I'm going to remove the salesperson from the grouping. Okay, I'm going to do a decision date as a grouping instead. So to remove it from the grouping, I just grab it, drag and drop. Now I can group by something else. So I'm going to group this one by, let's go with decision date. And the reason I go to field chooser and choose it from here is because I want it to stay on this grid, but I also want to group it. So if I grab this and moved it like this, it removes, I believe, yeah, it removes it from this decision date here. I'm going to take it back, remove it, put it back on there, and now I'm going to grab it from here, decision date, and drag and drop to group by there. Okay. Now what you can do, really cool little function here, I can right click on top of decision date, right click, and I can say group by default, and I can say group by quarter. See what it does there? So I grouped it by the quarter, and so it's not all by dates, it's putting everything into the quarter. And then I can also, I can go to, you know what, I can go into probability. Let's go to probability, and I'm going to remove everything less than 75. So I want my 75 and my hundreds to show up. So this is giving me a really great projections report by the quarter and everything 75% and greater. So this is going to be a great report to look at to say, these are probably the projects that are definitely going to go through and when they're going to go through on like per quarter. Okay, so great report there. So I'm going to rename this one grouped by quarter 75% and greater, something like that. And I'm going to save it as public, not as default, but just as a public report. Be careful saving filters here because, you know, on these reports where I just saved that filter, if you save a filter and save your company layout, save it as a company layout, a default grid layout, you know, you're not gonna have certain data in there. You're gonna, you know, skew your data. And a lot of times people will call in and be like, I'm not seeing this project on this report. You know, it's probably because you have a filter somewhere. So you know, be careful with setting filters. You know, that's pulling out quite a bit of projects from my current opportunities. Okay. Always call into, you know, always call into support if you're having any trouble and you want to, you know, some more help on how to get a particular layout the way that you want it. And, you know, we're here for you to make it a little bit better and help you better run your business. So just call into support if you need anything. And this is going to, you know, make it easier for to look at, and the data easier to look at. Get rid of all those columns that you may not necessarily need. There's a lot of, you know, information on these reports, a lot of helpful information, but there's a lot of data that you just don't need to look at. So these will help it make you help run your business a little bit easier, and you can tweak it and make different reports. And this is per grid layout. So anyways, if you have any questions, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please call into support. Looking forward to getting some more videos out to you guys. Have a good day. Bye-bye.